This is the setup for MuppetFest. This is day 2. We didn't bring the camera yesterday, but thought maybe we could kind of sneak some footage today.
Is that Dave Goals again?
Yeah, Dave Goals. He's right there.
Greg Gonzo.
I think that's Steve Whitmire's. No, it's not Steve.
No, that's not Steve.
I'm trying to figure out some stuff. This David Brington Holt right there. He was here yesterday doing the creature shop stuff.
We will be doing some of the fun stuff that Kirk introduced yesterday. We have some great surprises planned. We have some very special technical difficulties planned for you today. Not the same technical difficulties we had yesterday, but we have whole new ones. And, you know, who knows, I may be tempted to part with my second high series trophy in a trivia game later on. Now, I'm going to put it down here because I don't want the rest of the participants to be reminded of my excellence in bowling. I would feel jealous because they've won Emmys and Grammys and all the other awards, and that would make them feel bad. Now, the first thing that Kirk did when he came out was tell you that Miss Piggy couldn't be with us today. And it is day 2 of MuppetFest, and she still couldn't be with us. But she did provide a second video greeting because she gave us a 2 for the price of 1 deal. That's the way that it works with the pig. Now we're going to try and roll this special video greeting. I'm going to go over here. And let's turn the lights down so we can watch.
That's 2 in French. Ooh, I see a lot of familiar faces from yesterday. It's so nice to see all of you again. But, one question. Don't you people have a wife?
Piggy! That's a terrible thing to say to our fans.
Oh, you should see the things they say about you on the internet.
What? Well, wait a minute, what do they say?
Oh, nothing.
Piggy, what do they say?
But, you have gone a few pounds. What? I love you all! Kissy, kissy!
Piggy, what are you talking about? Me fat? That's not true. I'm in great shape. I just got back from the workshop. Piggy, wait, what else did they say?
All right. I'm going to lights up just a little bit. As you know, Piggy couldn't be with us, but her counterpart is with us today and is with us all weekend. Is he here? Please welcome Kermit the Frog and Steve Whitmire, ladies and gentlemen.
Is this thing working today? Yeah. Good morning, MuppetFesters. Sounds like some weird skin disease. But anyway, I'm so glad you're all here today, and I'm here. It's my great honor. It's my great honor to tell you about this next person. Now, as most of you know, it wasn't just Jim Henson who started all this. It was also Jane Henson. That's right. Now, way back in about 1955, I think it was 1955, they co-founded this company together. And incidentally, Jane is pretty much directly responsible for this guy being here back in the Atlanta airport. Some of you heard that yesterday. But the other thing is, of course, she was also a pretty darn good puppeteer, and she actually did me for a couple of things, I think, right? Yes. Anyway, please, a very warm round of applause for one of the people who makes me the happiest in my life, Jane Henson.
I'm supposed to talk about how we began and some of the early things, and I know some clips have been chosen from when we first began. Jim started, you'll have to help me a little bit. I'm going to take some questions and answers because I'm not quite sure what I ought to be covering in them. But Jim started in high school in College Park, Maryland, Northwestern High School, and he did a little bit of, he was in the Thespians and did theater work, and then he was in a puppet club, and the local station, WTOP, which is a CBS station, came and asked if someone wanted to do puppets on Saturday morning, and Jim really was very interested in television and wanted to get into television, so he thought, well, okay, I can do puppets, and he went to the library and got a book on puppetry and made some puppets and said, here I am, and then that's how he started. And then I met him in college at University of Maryland, and I met him when he was 18. And he had just made Kermit, I believe. I know he made Kermit when he was 18. And then I started working with him the following year. And then we were married about 3 years after that. So, I don't know what to tell. At first we were did just little bits on the afternoon show and such, and then the station, WRC, which the NBC station there, said that they liked us very much and would like to put us on for a 5-minute show daily, and they gave us 2 5-minute shows, and some wonderful programmer put us on at the end of the news strip, the early news strip and the late news strip. So we were on at 6:25, just before Huntley Brinkley, and then we were on at 11:25, just before the original Tonight Show with Steve Allen. So we picked up the Huntley Brinkley audience and the Steve Allen audience, so what could be better? What a wonderful start. So people said, you didn't start for children, and I thought, well, you know, we were right out of college. What's the humor? No, it's halfway between. It's not really adult, it's just college age humor. So, but we were very fortunate to get that kind of beginning. And of course, at that time, what opened the door for us was Bert Tillstrom, who did Kukla, Fran, and Ollie, and had built up a very fine audience. And then, of course, the other puppeteer that was well known at that time, mostly live but also on television, was Bill Baird. So Jim's inspirations as far as puppetry at that time, in the mid-50s, was Bert Tillstrom, the great Bert Tillstrom out of Chicago, and then Bill Baird out of New York. So I guess I should like to ask for a few little clips to be shown now. And look at that. It's still there. Okay, guys, play the clips.
Salmon Friends is brought to you by Esther. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the new... Hold it. Wait a minute. You can't come shouting in here. We're on the air. Let us off. I've got news that's too hot to keep. Ladies! Hold it. Look, Professor, I'm a patient man, but what could be important enough to shout about? All this confusion could cost us our job. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll try to remain calm as I tell you about the new SK identity flavor. It's the new SK pork and bacon sausage. It combines the wonderful taste of pure pork sausage with the delicious flavor of Hickory smoked quality bacon. Well, why didn't you say so sooner? Pork and bacon is the brand new flavor for tasty breakfast, and it cooks to a tender, meaty richness every time. The people over at SK make it fresh every day. Get some new SK pork and bacon sausage soon. Today! Remember, with SK quality meats, you can taste the difference quality makes.
Alfred, you have a very fascinating home. 5 pads, and exquisitely furnished, may I add. For instance, that armchair you're sitting in is very striking, and very expensive, too. Why is it so expensive? It's made out of real art. What is that music I hear? Hi-fi Martin Billy, I just heard you going to the show down on Main Street. Yeah, so what? I was just wondering what movie was playing. Movie was playing? Yeah, the show down on Main Street. Why don't you just go away and leave me alone, Lester? Let's see. My car is coming in on the next stagecoach. I wonder when that is. Somebody call me? Who are you? Thaddeus Quentin Hobothorne. I'm the first. I'm a dramatic teacher at the Bijou Theater. The Bijou Theater? That's the new showdown on Main Street. Good grief. You teach dramatics and then you're uh-oh. That's right. I'm a stagecoach. Oh, get out of here. Chief. Looks like a good spot here, Jack. Yeah, all right. Hold up. Oh, all right now. Nice. Which one of us can we get off on? Well, let me try to get down. All right. Now, wait a minute. Hold up there. Wait a minute. Let's try it. Let me ride over there. All right. All right. Oh, wait a minute. All right. There you go. All right. Hold up. Yeah. One right around. Maybe you can get down and maybe you can help me off. All right. Wait a minute. I'll try to go back and see if I can. Back in my car. Hold that boy. All right. Now, let me just sweep my leg left and right through. Swing the left one over and hang on to the right. All right. Now, you know, wait a minute. No, now I got one foot on the ground. Hey, come back. You got one foot on the ground.
Some of the characters are in there are not the most well-known character. That one character that looked like a chicken liver, his name is Chicken Liver. And he actually was the one puppet that stayed around our house for years and years and was used and pulled apart by the kids and everything. It's funny to see him here sort of featured. I will say that SK, of course, was our sponsor. And Sam and Friends was before there was tape, so these pieces are kinescoped, and so very little is saved from Sam and Friends. Now, we used records, commercial records, and the first one, I really don't know who it's doing it, the interview of I guess it's Edward Murrow, is that right? And then Alfred Hitchcock, that piece. I'm not sure who did that record, but I know the one on the horses. One of those voices is Bob Hope, and then the Pun Smoke, the Takeoff on Gunsmoke, that was one of Jim's very earliest written pieces. He wrote that piece. All of the background artwork that you see, it's all Jim's work, and actually Jim built all of those characters. And then the last one is Stan Freberg, and we depended on Stan Freberg's music a lot. But at that time, there were a lot of humor records, and we pulled all kinds of humor records. And if it went well, if it didn't go well, we wouldn't use it again, and then if it went well, we'd save it and do it again. So we did 10 live performances a week, and of those, Jim usually did 2 or 3 that were original, and the rest we would pull from different pieces that had gone well. And a lot of, these are original kinescopes, but a lot of what we have that we used on Sam and Friends later were used on Ed Sullivan and other variety shows, and those with the color videos and all, so that's pretty much what's saved. But these are really the old pieces, and I hope your sound was better down there than up here. But, I don't know what a better way is to do here, but maybe at this point I could ask for a few questions. Could I ask for a few questions to see if anybody has any questions about the very earliest years? We started, and this was in 1955 that we started Sam and Friends. The name of the show was Sam and Friends. It had, oh, by the way, it had one human, Sam, and all the rest of the characters were kind of not quite human. Harry is the dark guy with the glasses, he's usually a drummer, and the little drummer guy, and then Chicken Liver, and then Kermit, of course. Oh, and Professor Madcliffe was the wild guy. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about how you obtained your sponsors and how tough of a sell was it at that time to get sponsors?
Well, as I said, the person who was in charge of putting on programs, for whatever reason, chose to put us on the end of the news strip in the nation's capital. That's fantastic. As far as getting a sponsor, I think SK, they kind of really liked sponsoring us. The whole business was much more cottage industry kind of mentality than it really was, not the way it is now. It's much smaller. But we didn't know, I don't think we had trouble getting sponsors. But that's the only sponsor we ever had at SK for that particular show. Then we started doing commercials later.
Hey.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Randall McGee.
Hi, Randall.
Were you helping Jim in those scenes we saw, or who was doing the voices?
The voices were the commercial records, and in Pun Smoke, the Takeoff of Gunsmoke, that's Jim's script and all Jim's voices. I never used my voice. I only manipulated from pre-recorded pieces. And yes, the secondary performer in all the pieces was probably me.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is, since you started out in Washington, D.C., and having been there sometimes, did you find it to be more of an open area to try and experiment with these things? Do you think perhaps you had a better shot at achieving your goals than anywhere else, or?
We very much liked being outside the main places, although Washington's a wonderful center. And I think in the station we were in, they were very used to doing news shows and, you know, conversation shows, and so our show was considered great fun. The people working on it loved doing all kinds of odd little things. Yeah, the crew and all enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
And we really felt that we didn't want to come to New York until we had a good position. So we didn't come to New York until we had a weekly position, a weekly appearance on the Today Show, and we had a lot of commercials set up before we came to New York. And then right after we came to New York, we started having the variety show and Ed Sullivan shows. Here first? Yes.
Hi. A lot of the old commercials that I've seen, the Wilkins Coffee commercials and LaCroix Dragon, a lot of them are amazingly violent. Some of them, there's a lot of sexual innuendo, there's a lot of very kind of edgy, dark stuff. Was there ever concerns, did you ever get feedback from anybody that it was too dark, that it was too weird, too adult?
I think Jim did whatever kind of he wanted at that time. And we weren't slotted for children until we started Sesame Street, which was a good 10 years later.
So nobody was ever concerned, you never got anything that said, you guys are
well,
being
we
very strange.
were watched by continuity, and if anything went too far, they did let us know. And they were pretty strict about continuity at that time. And the station had a continuity, whatever.
Did that ever happen? Did they
General.
ever tell you, like, no, that's too weird, don't do that? Do you remember?
Once in a while, not too often. For the most part, people like little weird endings. It got to the point a little later on where if you didn't know an ending with the Muppets, somebody was eaten or somebody was blown up. It takes the place of a good ending.
It's a pleasure to get to talk to you. My question is, what were the TV people's reaction when Jim originally went to him and said, we're going to take away that promenade that you'd usually seen on puppet shows on television and film before that, and we're going to get the cameras real close to these puppets, where some of the initial television executives going, we can't do that. That's not done.
Well, I think the executives could care less. I mean, they really were not watching. But in the studio, well, I guess they were watching, but it was Jim who felt that we did, set up stages. First we had prosceniums, and then we had just a straight stage that we hid behind. And then after a while we realized, well, what are we hiding from? And the camera at that time was fixed. The cameras didn't go up and down. They were fixed at a height. I think it was 5'6", but I'm not really sure. But it was fixed. So we knew exactly below that you weren't seen. So it was really Jim who decided that it was much easier just to have nothing in the way than you could work into the camera and out of the camera. Right? And as I say, the crews of the technical people at WRC just loved playing. We were playtime for them. We were playtime.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Sensen. I have a question. How many Wilkins coffee commercials did you make with Jim?
Goodness gracious. 123. No, I don't know. 100 plus.
Yeah. I hope you remember me because I saw you at O'Neill Theater and I took a picture with you.
Did you?
Yeah.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, I hope you recognize me. I had a purple tie. So I went to Jim Henson Company and you told me to make my own puppets and I did.
Good for you. I hope you're making
I hope I'll see you again when I work for the Henson Company. So, 103 commercials, right?
Hi. At that time, did you have a favorite character? A personal favorite?
I love chicken liver, actually. It was the most bizarre looking puppet. Well, Kermit really was the best, but Kermit worked so well with the other characters. Sam was wonderful, Harry was wonderful. I guess I didn't really have a favorite.
Thanks.
Hi there. Yes.
Where do you make your movie?
Say it again, honey.
Where do you make your movie?
Where are the movies made? Well, the movies were made a lot later, and I'm only supposed to go up to through the 50s and the 60s. But the favorite place of making films, if that's fair to say, I think was England. Our company did very well making films in England. A lot of shows were made in cooperation with Canada. They were filmed, there were specials, and then, of course, also here in Hollywood. But mostly in England. Okay, another question? Okay.
Hi, Mrs. Henson. My name is Rob Barrows.
Hi.
I have one of my coworkers who was one of your neighbors in Maryland, and I understand that you and Jim used to create paintings in your houses and things, kind of abstracts and things. Did you ever have a favorite?
Well, you're making that both. Jim did paintings on his walls in his parents' home in Hyattsville, Maryland. That's true. And some of them have been. Another neighbor he did some Matador paintings in their rec room, and that has been saved actually by University of Maryland. The mural he did in his living room, I think, has been covered up. And then when we got our own house in Bethesda, then he did characters all around the whole basement wall, and I don't know whatever happened to those, but yes, he liked to paint on the walls.
Hi. Who was Kermit and how did his character evolve?
Kermit. Jim was on television for a little while before he made Kermit. A really little while. I'm talking about a few months before he realized that although the Kukla and Ollie characters are like the Kukla characters, not Ollie, but Kukla is like this. And but what he felt about while he was working on television was that he realized that the television could make the puppet face just as important as a human face. And so he wanted to make something a puppet that showed all little subtleties. So that's when he made Kermit out of his mother's old coat, which is true. the rag bag, and he had nothing inside of his head, Kermit's head, except his own hand. And then he would work a lot in front of mirrors to get all the little subtlety of the movements of his hands, and his swallowing and the different. And then he would watch that on the screen. And at that time, when we would perform, and there'd be a monitor over there somewhere. We'd call across the studio and say, turn the monitor around so we can see it, you know, that kind of thing. And then, of course, little by little, they brought the monitors closer and they got small. And then now our performers always perform with monitors right here, so, and you watch every little subtlety. But Jim was intrigued with the way, especially because he was on this news strip. So you'd have the international news, the national news, weather, sports, and Kermit. You know, so that was kind of great. He loved it. Okay, now it's Kermit's face, and then he enjoyed the subtleties very much. Does that answer your question? He was 18, sort of going to 19.
I have a two-part question. Since the earliest clips were done to already existing pre-recorded audio tracks, did you find you were in a situation where you had to get the rights to do the songs, or was it more in the realm of parody or local access?
I think we were working in it. It's something that didn't have a precedent to it, so we just, they were used just as though they were being used on the radio, like we were playing a record on the radio. And Stan Freberg heard about it.
Well, that's going into the next question. Did you ever get any feedback from people whose works you had done, saying they saw what you did and they loved it, or what did you do to my record?
A little of both. They were annoyed, and then they'd come and look through it, and then they'd say, yay, it's great. So, but it's not easy for me to know. Yes, we always had to put it through correctly through the publisher and everything. We had a routine there at WRC that the fellow who was in charge of the music library would do it. Definitely, but we didn't have... I'm not sure that we would be able to do that today. I'm not sure that we would.
Thank you very much for your answer. And I hope you remember me in about 2 years when I get a job working for you as a historian archivist. I'll be wearing a plaid tie, so we're clear.
Plaid? Oh, good. I'll remember. Thank you.
At that early point in your career, did you guys have a clear idea in mind of any particular goal you were trying to achieve, or you want to have a network show, or you want to make a movie someday?
Okay, but then you're doing that sort of as a group thing. I never had any plans or goals. Jim always did. He definitely had his goals, and I think that he would, if he had done, he would have gone straight for being a film director if he could. But then he got kind of intrigued with this puppetry on television, and the more it became a very direct way of working. He loved like the things that puppets could do and how they could become so real on television, and became very exact about the way he performed them and all. And the more he used them, the more he realized that the potential was so vast, and he really was always very interested in going for the larger potential. Yes, he was determined and pushed quite hard.
Ms. Henson, I wanted to thank you and your family for so many years of laughter and education. It really My question is, where is the original Sam and where is the original Kermit the Frog stored? Is that at your home?
Where are they stored?
Are they at the Smithsonian? Are they at your home? I guess stored is not the right word. Where
Yes,
are they?
no, I think probably at this point it is stored. Now and then they are brought out and put on exhibit. Our exhibit department of our exhibits of our company, we have had them in different exhibits and museums, but they are with us and stored. Yes, they are. Probably not all of them, but most of the main people are. Main guys. The original Kermit is, and Sam is.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I was wondering if you could talk a little about how Ralph the dog came to be.
Ralph the dog. I think he's in a little clip here. He was first made for Purina Dog Chow commercial in Canada, and I believe the date was like very early 60s, maybe 62 1962 or something like that in Canada, and he had another dog with him called Baskerville. Of course, in Jim's usual way of designing, one was around like this and the other is tall and skinny, so that's kind of the way he designed things. And Baskerville didn't really have a future ahead of him, but obviously Ralph did. And those were the first puppets that were, especially Ralph, was the first puppet that was built for us by Don Salin, or Saline, which people pronounce it, right? And he was our, many of you know, was our main builder, and had a lot to do with the look of Sesame Street, and he was part of a very early team. He came to us actually from Burr Tilston. He had been rebuilding some of the Kukla columns for Burr when he came and joined us. And as I said, in 1962, Ralph was the first character that he built. And then, of course, he went on to do the Jimmy Dean Show, and that's when he became a star, when he worked on the Jimmy Dean Show as Jimmy Dean's dog. That was during the 60s. I'm not sure of the dates. 63, 64, yes. Hi.
Hello. First, I'd like to say that I think it's a really huge treat to have you here sharing your thoughts and efforts.
Oh, I hope so.
And I was wondering about Kermit.
Yes.
Specifically, I mean, we talked about his past, but it seems that in the early years he was a little bit more of his collar and his flippers. Was he originally intended to be a frog?
No, he was not. No. In Sam and Friends, Sam was the only human, and all the other characters were, we considered abstractions. Abstractions of thoughts, abstractions of qualities within a person, and maybe they were part of Sam, maybe not, but Sam was a little bit in awe of all of the world. That was, he was wide-eyed and just looked, he either said yes or no, and that's all. And then there were all these like abstract characters, and Kermit was one of them. But we found actually that in order to talk about the character, the press liked Kermit, but they needed to identify it, so he became the lizard-like character, the frog-like green character, that sort of thing. So we found that even though the idea of having abstract characters is a nice idea, but people you can't really grab onto that too well, so abstract didn't work that well. But then he became a frog in Frog Prince. And he got his flippers and his collar.
Miss Henson, let's set the record straight.
What?
That has been in many Henson books. That has been in many official press releases.
And I'm wrong? Am I wrong?
That is legend that has become wrong. The Frog Prince was in 1973, and Kermit was already definitely a frog by then, when Sesame Street started. Hey Cinderella, he was a frog by then, so we're talking about the late 60s.
Thank you. Then in that case, I learned an answer.
Let's not perpetuate that rumor anymore.
I am wrong. But in that case,
Hey, over here. That's just long propagated stuff. No.
When did he become a frog, Greg?
It was Hey Cinderella, but Frog Prince was earlier than 73. It might have been re-released in 71.
Frog Prince, actually, I know because the baby at the end of Frog Prince is Heather.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering how Jim met Frank Oz, and also how the Muppets became involved with Star Wars.
Okay. Well, it was just Jim in high school, and Jim actually had some other friends. I was not the first person that he had working along with him, but then it was the two of us for several years. And then we got married, and we had one baby, and then anyway, we had a baby. And then we decided, this was in 1960, and Jim really wanted to expand, and he wanted to go forth and find other people to work with. And we had never had any other puppeteers that we knew, but we knew there was an organization called Puppeteers of America. So we went to our first Puppeteers of America conference in Detroit in 1960, and that's when we started meeting puppeteers. And we met Frank's parents, Mike, many of you know Mike and Francis Oswald, and we met Burr, and we met Don Saline, and Rufus Rose and Margot Rose, many of you know them from Hard Duty, and Bill Baird was in it. Anyway, we met a lot of puppeteers, and that was our first introduction to puppeteers as a community and as a group in the United States. And they told us that Mike and Francis had a young son who was still in high school, who was very good, and of course Jim started asking, who do you think I could work with? let's see, we also met Tony Urbano at that time. And they were recommending, Tony also was recommending Frank. And so then the following year we went out to Asilomar, to the conference at Asilomar, and that would have been 1961, I guess. And at that time we found Frank Oz, a young Frank Oz, and Jerry Jewell, who were working at Fairyland in Oakland. Or this is approximately true, it might not be exactly true, but they had been working together. And we watched Frank do a mime. He did not use his voice. We watched that, and that was in 1961 in Asilomar. And we watched Jerry Jewell and talked to Jerry Jewell. Jerry Jewell was a little bit older, so he came and worked with us then in Washington, and that was the first time that one of the new group came. And Don Solon was making Ralph. So then there was Jerry Jewell, and then Jerry Jewell and Jim started writing a lot of things together. And Jerry was performing quite a bit then too. I don't know how many of you know who Jerry Jewell is, but very fine performer, but really he preferred writing, so he became our head writer for quite a while, certainly for the Muppet Show, a lot on Sesame Street. And then Frank came a couple of years later, I think about 1964, so he came to New York. And then there were the four of them, Jim and Don Solon, Jerry Jewell, and Frank Oz. They were together. After a while, Frank found his voice. Actually, the first time Frank really worked with voices was Sesame Street. That's where he developed his characters, which is, of course, now he's superb. Is that enough?
Do you remember how the Muppets came about being involved with The Empire Strikes Back, the Yoda character?
Who knows? I was at home with the kids.
Thanks.
Maybe you already feel like you answered this question, so I apologize. I just wondered if you could, if you haven't said it already, say what the most maybe taxing or challenging thing was about your partnership with Jim Henson, and what was the most rewarding thing? Maybe they're both the same thing, I don't know.
It's not the kind of questions I usually either contemplate or answer. Well, I think the creative work is just wonderful, and I love the work that the Muppets have done. It's been marvelous. Taxing. Well, there are lots of times, I guess, when the work took precedent over personal life. But I expected that. I think I'm not quite answering you, and that may be my own choice. Am I finished already? I haven't even seen the rest of the clip. Should I see them?
Well, we're going to be showing a lot of other clips. Today we have to keep the schedule going because of tonight's. But we have time for, I think, 2 more questions.
I'm going to take one question. Can I take one? No, there are 3. Oh, dear.
Just first of all, pleasure to meet you.
Oh, thank you.
My question is actually somewhat similar to his, just Jim loved and cared for his characters, but was it always outside of the studio? I mean, was it always, say, you, Jim, and a character, or Kermit, or was it always that there was, how was this?
No, you mean, did Jim bring his characters home and work?
How much of his work was outside of work?
The only time he was a character at home, and the kids know this, is when he had to carve the Thanksgiving turkey. Thanksgiving turkey was always carved by Link Hogthrob. So I could do that. No, he didn't do characters at home.
Thank you.
Well,
I'm just trying to picture it all.
I don't know what to do about this guy. Stan Freberg, well, we used so many of his records, and he did hear that we were doing that. This was in Washington, and he came kind of with what was, I guess, an entourage. We had never seen such a thing. He came with about 10 people. And then while he was there, he loved it, and he went away, and then we started seeing more of his puppets. So he seemed to be fine about it. We think he's wonderful.
Hi. I was born in 1971, so I'm one of the kids who grew up on Sesame Street.
Yes.
And my parents were new to this country, and they'd flip on Sesame Street, and to this day, my mother credits it for having taught me how to speak English. So thank you very much for that.
Well, you seem to be doing very well.
Thank you. And my question is, since you were talking about the early days, I was wondering if the University of Maryland has done anything in honor of Jim, perhaps started a puppetry program or anything to that effect.
We're trying to do some puppetry things there. He has had an honorary doctorate there, which is very nice, and I think they're putting up a statue of him.
Excellent.
In the next year, there'll be a statue printed in there.
Congratulations.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jane Henson was here.